sound like the daisies, like the tall poppies. Come down and disintegrate with me. We're cut down like the daisies. Take it all nice and slow, like those endless hot summers. But you will never be blithe and careless, and your music will never be long and sweet and low. Singing a song while I'm happy. Singing a song while I'm happy. Singing a song while I'm changing all the things that you did. All that faith that you're staying in love, my sweet kid. Oh, sweet kid, well this life belongs to you. Oh, sweet kid, all the changes that you're going through. So don't get too close to me. I can promise you a miracle, but I won't be there if you think of me. They're like the beat at the back of your skull. All the ways that you're changed then, with every skin that you shed. All that faith that you're staying in love, my sweet kid. Changing all the things that we did. All that faith that you're staying in love, my sweet kid. Oh, sweet kid, well this life belongs to you. Oh, sweet kid, all the changes that you're going through.
Seen this from Dino, who says, Steve, looking forward to Suede. They are truly the band of the, in capital letters, the band of a generation. Can't wait for Antidepressants. Well, wait no longer as we cross to the Maida Vale studios. Our special guests this week are indeed Suede have joined us ahead of the release of the new album on Friday. Good evening, gentlemen.
Hi, Steve. How you doing?
That track I'm playing for you, well, at least you, Brett, because when I was doing a bit of prep, I found a list of albums that you'd chosen for a feature. I mean, it's a few years back now.
Oh, that was the Quietest thing, wasn't it?
I think it was, actually. But
Baker's Dozen thing,
So talking about records that you grew up with, and you said that one immediately takes you back to being 16 and listening to it in your bedroom.
It really does. Just listening that there, I was back again in my little room in Newton Road in Linfield, kind of like rain outside, and putting that track on again. But fantastic stuff.
Always rained when we were 16.
It always rains when you play Joy Division, really, doesn't it? You know.
What else were you listening to at that point? I think in the same piece there was reference to Kate Bush's Hounds of Love, maybe the Sex Pistols.
That was a bit later. Stuff like the Fall and the Smiths and that sort of thing. That kind of like early 80s indie stuff. Very much Smiths really, Bowie, that sort of of stuff, you know.
Where did this come from? Was it from the radio or family or friends?
Yeah, lots. Well, it's kind of John Peel, wasn't it? It was kind of like stuff like that. But it's also the music press. I think you know, in those days, I used to read the music press kind of religiously, and in those days, for anyone that doesn't know, there was like 3 weekly music magazines. It was pretty crazy, and often would read about bands and sort of read about them before you actually heard them, which was kind of a slightly strange experience.
Yeah.
And sort of reading about the Fall before I ever heard them, and kind of going to a record shop and buying I can't remember what it was, Wonderful and Frightening World or something like that.
Yeah.
And loving it, kind of thing. But that was a kind of weird experience, you know. I don't think you get that anymore. You know?
Well, it's strange, isn't it? Because there was a mystery around these records. However well they were described to you, you didn't really know exactly what it was going to sound like in a lot of cases until, you know, there was this suspense until you put the needle on the record.
It was a kind of gamble, wasn't it? A quite exciting gamble. And the other thing as well is that, you know, when you're a kid, when you're sort of 13, 14, you haven't got any money. So so it's like you kind of like, it's quite a big investment, you know, spending like £7 on an album or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then you kind of had to live with that record for the next month until you could afford another one. So you're basically sort of living in the world of this album and sort of devouring it and learning every single word and every single second, sort of thing. But there's something quite lovely about that, you know.
Do you listen to any of that music now? I mean, I've found myself, I've never been one to go back a lot and listen to, you know, music from my youth, but I've found I do it a bit more now. I don't know whether that's an age thing.
Yeah, I do. I mean, you know, I've recently sort of rediscovered record players. I sort of bought myself a couple of record players and kind of like dug out my old records again. And obviously, you know, your old records are sort of totemic of your past. And you kind of just remember playing them. So yeah, very much so. But I try and not to be too sort of retro with it. I think kind of a blend of old records and new stuff is quite nice. Trying to be quite healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there has been, obviously already, you know, talk around the new album, which, you know, about there are certain references to music of that era, which is something we'll come back to after your first song tonight. What are you going to start with?
We're going to start with Disintegrate.
There you go. It's Suede, absolutely live on Six Music. It is Suede on Six Music. Our guest playing live in session for us this evening. That's a track from the new album Antidepressants, which comes out this coming Friday. I suppose the last time we spoke, actually it was in Glasgow around Independent Venue Week, wasn't it? But it was around also Fiction, which those gigs though, the gigs which accompanied that album were some of the best live shows you've probably done in age. I saw you in Brixton at the Electric in Brixton. You were like a band unleashed. It was such a liberating set, I think. Yeah. I don't know how you found it.
Oh, I just love the whole sort of that whole period, the autofiction period. It's just really interesting because we sort of like, I think we sort of like became the band that we always sort of wanted to be and always sort of felt that we kind of could be, sort of thing. So it's difficult to describe, but it felt like a very sort of like sort of homecoming in a funny sort of way. Can't describe it. So yeah, it's great. Really great live energy. With that whole tour, and that's what we wanted to kind of carry on with this tour. You know?
Yeah, I was going to say, and did the success of the album and the fire of those gigs, did that then inform the this record?
Definitely, yeah. No, I think we kind of like, we just love being a rock band again. We can always sort of like wander off and do kind of interesting, odd, arty things, but we always kind of come back to being a kind of like a dirty little rock band. You know?
Well, it feels like, I mean, this record and the last record, it feels like Suede without a Suede rule book. In a way, do you see that? It's Suede without thinking too hard about
exactly.
Suede.
Yeah, exactly. It feels it feels sort of very natural, sort of thing, you know. Yeah.
You said, I sound very accusatory. I was even pointing my finger in the studio. You said Autofiction was the punk album, and this is the post-punk album. I think if when you describe something as post-punk, it's a bit dangerous because some people mistake post-punk now as just being a groovy bass line, whereas in fact your post-punk actually tallies with some of the music of 79, 83, which wasn't just about the sound, it was about the feeling, and quite often feelings of isolation or division.
Yeah, I mean, when I say that this is our post-punk record. I don't mean it's sort of like it's not supposed to be like a pastiche sort of thing. It's sort of like post-punk through a Suede lens. The number one thing is that it has to be a Suede record, first of all, but with some of those influences thrown in. And the same with Autofiction. That was, I called our punk record.
Right.
And people were sort of picking me up on it because it wasn't a punk record. Do you know what I mean? There's a kind of difference. But I've never wanted to kind of ape a genre.
No.
That's not interesting to me at all, you know.
No.
But yeah, I think post-punk it sort of took the kind of the anger of punk, and it sort of took it. I don't know. It sort of brought melancholy and sort of things like that into it, didn't it? It made it kind of, it sort of broadened it somehow.
That. And when I say, you know, isolation or division, there was a tension about it, a different sort, a different kind of tension.
Yeah, so it was sort of more three-dimensional. I think punk had a sort of, the point of it was that it had this sort of like one-dimensional kind of like anger energy sort of thing, and post-punk sort of broadened the sort of template a little bit. I think.
And where was your head at when you sat down to, because you know you've got 10 plus songs to write what you're feeling at a time. Did you have a theme in your head, or did you have something that you wanted to say in the songs? Was there something that you were not obsessing about but thinking about that you wanted to communicate?
Yeah, I always have a kind of couple of sort of points that I'm kind of sort of ruminating, but I think lots of the themes kind of they reveal themselves when you're making a record. And one of the questions we asked ourselves about making this record was, how is it going to be different from Autofiction? And I always sort of like trusted that it just would be, because you're making it at a different time in your life, so different themes are coming through. But yeah, I sort of started off with, there's a lot of kind of a sense of memento mori on the record. That's one of the main themes, that it's a sort of like, it's a kind of like, it's an embrace of death, but the point of that being that you'll live life to the full kind of thing, that sort of idea, which sounds rather heavy for this time of night, maybe. Maybe not.
But you know what? In my notes, I was thinking about this when I was listening to it, and you know, I'm sorry to bring up age, but you know, as soon as you start thinking about your own mortality, I find you get the hurry up, because there's more to do and say, and less time to do it.
Exactly. There's not enough. You suddenly realise that you don't have all the time in the world, and this is what I feel about the band and what I feel about my life. Is like, who knows what's going to happen in the future? So just make the most of it. Do you know what I mean? That's one of the main themes of the record. You know?
Yeah. And I mean, also, just to go back to the sound for a second and the performance of it, I really like the title track, which, I mean, does have a sort of sinewy post-punk thing going on, but it's your vocal delivery which is priceless, because there's a line, what's the line? There's not much time, is there?
Yeah, it's my sort of deadpan Leiden kind of vibe going on, yeah.
It's a new level of... What's the other one? There's a room at the back just in case you get scared. Prisoner. Yeah,
that's...
It's a new level of scorn for you, young man.
Yeah, I quite like that sort of cynicism in the vocal. But I mean, I've been sort of experimenting the last couple of records, experimenting with sort of like sing speak, or whatever it's called, Sprechendisch, I can't remember what it's called now, what the German phrase is, but it's sort of like half singing, half speaking. And I kind of quite like it. I feel as I've sort of made it my own thing. Yeah. Obviously, I'm kind of leaning on sort of like a bit of Leiden and a bit of Marquis Smith, because they were the sort of masters of that sort of thing. So that's where it comes from, obviously. But there's probably Provenance before that, you know. Yeah. But yeah, fantastic.
I'm just glancing at some of my notes, which I made when I first started listening to the record. For some broken music, I've just got in brackets after it, thrilling. Which is, thank you, because it's a big stompers. Can I actually ask you just very quickly before you play us another couple of songs about another track which I'm a real fan of, Sweet Kids, and I couldn't work out whether this was written about maybe, you know, the teenager of now, or whether it was you as a teenager, or whether it was a mixture of both.
Well, I sort of wrote it. I did actually write it about my son, so it's not really about me. I kind of quite like writing about my family. I wrote about a song about him a couple of albums ago called Life is Golden, and I wrote that about a different sort of phase of his life, and now he's a teenager, so it's a slightly different kind of flavour. But I like writing about my family, because I kind of like that's where passion is as a 58-year-old man, I think, these days. I think when you're a young man, you're writing about young man things like, you know, girlfriends and feeling a bit lonely and stuff like that. And as you get older, you have to sort of find passion somewhere else. But I try and write about my family in a kind of unromantic way. So I think that there's a danger of writing about your family and it being a bit chocolate boxy. So I try to bring a bit of tension in there, you know. I always try to look for the cloud in the silver lining.
It's odd though, but there is a sympathy for the character. That means if you don't know, obviously, and some people won't, it's about your son, about a person, isn't it? And it still feels like there's a part of you or a part of all of us in that person you're writing about. Absolutely,
yeah, but I think that's a really interesting thing about becoming a father, actually, is that it sort of makes you reflect on your own life at that point. It unlocks memories of your sort of childhood and all these things. So when my son's kind of living a life at various stages in his life, I'm kind of like reflecting on how I was at that time, sort of thing. So it's kind of partly about him and it's partly about me as well. I think that's a really interesting sort of chain, you know.
Absolutely.
Kind of like chain of generations, you know.
Here's a couple more tracks from the album out at the end of the week, as mentioned, performed for us live, ladies and gentlemen. What are you going to do next?
Well, we're going to play Antidepressants, so get ready for the old the old snarl.
All right, you can do both of these together. I won't interrupt you after them. It is Suede live on Six Music. Here you go. Yes, our guest Suede playing live for us this evening. A pleasure having you back on the show. Thank you very much. Given you were saying, you know, the importance of the live side of what you do. Dates next year.
Yes,
is that right? Dates next year.
We're playing January, February next year, and pretty much most of the year as well. Everyone's going to be sick of us by the end of next year. Before that, if they're not already.
Before that, you're hogging the South Bank, though.
Yes, we are.
And you tell us, for people who don't know, you're doing a sort of curated run of interesting stuff in London.
They haven't actually asked us to do a meltdown, so we thought we'd do our own one, sort of thing, you know.
Right.
No, it's we're just sort of playing like about different sorts of gigs over different spaces. We're doing the Royal Festival Hall, which will be sort of like rock. And then we're doing a kind of weird off-mic acoustic thing, which might be a complete disaster at the Purcell Rooms. And we're doing an orchestrated thing with the Para Orchestra at the Queen Elizabeth Hall. So different sorts of events, and there's kind of films going on and stuff like that. So yeah, we're going to occupy the South Bank. Always loved the South Bank. It's a kind of amazing kind of institution, amazing buildings and everything. Always loved it. So it's kind of nice to be playing there in the centre of London.
Excellent opportunity, that. Well, listen, good luck from all of us with the album.
Thank you so much.
All the best to you. We'll see you soon. That was
Take care, man.
Suede live on Six Music, everyone.